Welcome to the Filmcast's review of The Exorcist Believer, the new film by David Gordon Green. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet. Quote, when his daughter Angela and her friend Catherine show signs of demonic possession, it unleashes a chain of events that forces single father Victor Fielding to confront the nadir of evil. Terrified and desperate, he seeks out Chris McNeil, the only person alive who has witnessed anything like it before. End quote.
The nadir of evil, eh?
This is, of course, a direct sequel to William Friedkin's The Exorcist. Watching that movie for the recent Filmcast After Dark really got me, first of all, admiring of that film, right? Like, what a picture. One of the greatest movies of all time. And it got me really excited to see what David Gordon Green, a director who has very frequently shown himself to be talented, particularly in the horror genre, what he would be able to do with this material. So, Devindra Hardwar, do you feel like The Exorcist Believer is a worthy follow-up to William Friedkin's The Exorcist?
You know, that's a tough question because I think this is like 3/4 of a great movie. And it kind of does the thing that we're talking about, right? Like being a direct sequel, it can't help but pay homage and it honestly just repeat some bits from the first one, like starting in a foreign country, in an exotic country. Um, a lot of the beats are repeated, and I think what this movie does, it does capture another element of fear for parents, which is what if your kid disappears? You know, whereas that first movie was very much about like something's happening to my child and I don't know what's happening and I'm like totally helpless. I have to leave it up to medical experts and they're failing me. This is another aspect of like anxiety that I think every parent is just always dealing with. So I do think it deserves credit for like tapping into that idea. Um, I like all these new characters. I like the setup of this thing, but we get to the end and it is just kind of a weird mess that we'll talk about in spoilers. Like, I do think David Gordon Green deserves a little credit. Like, there is a humanist side, I think, to his horror and maybe to his worldview or the way they've been building up this movie and also his Halloween trilogy, which I think an element of the Halloween trilogy was like the community, right? Like, can be used for good. In Halloween Kills, the second one was just all about the community kind of going crazy and being uncontrollable. And in the last one, that was very much about the community both ostracizing somebody, but also kind of coming together. And isn't that, the real Halloween was the friends we made along the way. I think there is some praiseworthiness to that like sort of worldview being in a movie like this. I think this movie kind of just shits the bed at the end completely. So I really liked where things were going. It definitely creeped me out. I thought it was doing some new interesting stuff. But man, in a year when we got Talk to Me, in a year when I just saw When Evil Lurks, like both original expressions of horror that also kind of delve into possession as a plot point, but aren't just Exorcist movies. I think it shows like how weak this movie actually is. But it is, I think, even more disappointing that first 3/4, I think, like a full, like I can pretty much clock when it gets bad. Um, but so much of it just felt so good. I thought I was in good hands until the very end.
I would say the first half, honestly. I didn't make it
There's
to
a
three
lot about
quarters of that.
the other bit I like. Yeah.
Yeah, but what David Gordon Green does do well, I think, is he captures the look and feel of the original Exorcist. Like literally, the way the B-roll is shot and
Mhm.
framed is very similar to what it was like in The Exorcist. You know,
The
the
movie
writer.
starts with two dogs fighting, and it was like, is that a
Yeah.
shot from the first movie?
It's just that shot of the two dogs fighting, basically. Yeah.
You know, the writer and film critic Ed Whitfield shared what William Friedkin had to say about The Exorcist Believer. He said, quote, William Friedkin once said to me, Ed, the guy who made these new Halloweens is about to make one to my movie, The
Uh-huh.
Exorcist. That's right. My signature film is about to be extended by the man who made Pineapple Express. I don't want to be around when that happens. But if there's a
Wow.
spirit world and I come back, I plan to possess David Gordon Green and make his life a living hell. End quote.
Wow.
Is
So
that real?
Be hexed upon. I don't
Is
know.
that a real quote?
This is a commonly shared story from writer and film critic Ed Whitfield. And I will say
That sounds apocryphal. That sounds too.
it doesn't sound out of character for William Friedkin. I'm going to say that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
It
anyway,
just sounds too spot on to be.
it's too on the nose to be true. Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on The Exorcist Believer?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts about The Exorcist Believer is best summed up in the form of a limerick. It doesn't know what it's about, and the ending is such a cop-out. it won't make a list with the first Exorcist. Believer just filled me with doubt.
Nicely done,
nice.
Jeff.
I
Love it.
feel the energy and the wordplay in that one.
Love
Jeff.
it.
Good job.
Love it, Jeff.
I agree with everything Devindra said 100%. Actually, I guess I side more with Dave because
You don't like it as much. I do think part of it is great. Yeah.
I think it revs up real good. It revs up real good.
The first hour honestly, is incredible, I thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
The best thing about this movie is the casting.
Mm-hmm.
The casting is great. I love all these people. Leslie Odom Jr. is awesome. We all love Ann Dowd. I mean, ever since I saw Mass, which, by the way, if you want to see a real horror movie, sit down and watch Mass.
Sit down and watch
and
Mass.
Gentlemen. You want to see Ann Dowd scare the bejesus out of you? Watch Mass.
Also, Ann Dowd in The Leftovers, which shares a lot of this too, to be honest.
And
yes.
Norbert Leo Butz, who has quietly become one of my favorite actors. He was just recently in Justified, what would call it?
Semi Primeval.
Semi Primeval, thank you. And I first became aware of him in Bloodline. The dude is fantastic. Always solid, always in these awesome, interesting character parts, often playing the guy who's morally weak, can't quite do the thing. So good. I love this guy.
He plays the guy we all know. You all know that guy.
Yeah.
And he's very good at it. Yeah.
He is great. He's great. I love this guy. And every time he pops up in something, I'm like, I love these getting work. So yes, the casting of this movie, fantastic. And it revs up real good. You get it really takes its time to kind of get you interested in these people. And you are so right. You know what the worst part of this Exorcist movie is?
What is that?
The exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to a grinding halt.
Yes.
It had one job.
Yeah.
It had one job. Honestly, it
title.
didn't even really have that job because the franchise is not called The Exorcism. It's called The Exorcist. And
it's true.
I mean, we'll get to it in spoilers, but we had a character who could be as interesting, and Dowd's character could be as interesting as
Father Karras in the original.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet the movie just, as you said, Devindra, completely shits the bed. It is the word I would use for this movie, and you guys know me, I'm not looking for being disturbed,
right,
per se. But the one word I would use to describe this movie is toothless. It is utterly toothless. It completely pulls back from being interesting. It approaches something really compelling and really interesting, and it does not have the guts or follow through or wherewithal to make it to actually be interesting. And it's a wasted opportunity. It's a waste of this franchise. It's a waste of the talent of a lot of really fantastic actors. It's a bummer, man.
Leslie Odom Jr., great in this. Like,
He's
I
great.
totally feel him. He's so good, and then wasted.
Dude, all the people in this movie are doing stellar work. Even the kids are pretty good.
Yeah, the kids are great too.
Yeah.
The child actors are amazing as well. So, guys, it's rare, but I basically completely agree with you. I think that, again, the first hour is, I'm it's so tense. I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm like, how is this going to unfold? And I already know where it's going. It's called The Exorcist Believer. I already know where we are heading in terms of the movie. But I'm still like, how is this going to unfold? And it introduces all these interesting characters. Like, as you said, basically, there's two people this time, right? There's two girls this time, and their parents are like very, very different. And seeing how they like bounce off each other, I'm like, oh, these are like interesting dynamics that like kind of justify why you might remake a movie like this. It's like, oh, we're trying to illustrate other components of maybe something in modern life that you wouldn't have found back when the original was made 50 years ago, right? And so I'm so into this. The first half. I'm like, this is great. Wow. Everyone's being too harsh on this movie. This movie has like a 35% runtime. Everyone's being too harsh.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I thought people were being
what
rough.
are people talking about? This is so good. And then it completely blows it in the second half. It's rare to see a movie completely blow it like this. But I would say that the biggest problems with the second half come down to a couple things that I'll just be vague about now, and we'll talk more in spoilers. Goofy stuff happens. Just random stuff happening without any
I
explanation
don't mind
or
random
build up.
goofy stuff. The first movie, the original, filled with some goofy things, but I think tonally was
Too
assured.
too
It
goofy.
knew what it was
Too
doing.
too
Yeah,
goofy
too
in this
goofy
movie.
sometimes.
And
yeah.
then also a lot of plot lines are just rushed, like
Oh my
really
God.
like
It becomes this convergence of all this stuff that
Yeah.
what are we doing? What
It's
are we
like, hey,
doing? It loses the thread, dude.
it cuts
Yeah.
to the end of like multiple subplots like real fast, and it feels completely unearned and very, very sloppy, and therefore, I mean, leaves me feeling like this is certainly not a worthy follow-up to the original, and I'm also not sure I'm looking forward to more of these because there's supposed to be 2 more
Yeah,
Exorcist films.
it was a deal. It was like a package deal,
Yeah.
right? So, oh
Yeah,
boy.
so there's supposed to be 2 additional Exorcist films, and, after this one, the thing is, a lot of the direction in the movie is very, very strong. Like, there's a lot of great
Mhm.
creepy moments. As I mentioned, it captures the look and feel of the original Exorcist. It is almost purely on a script level that this movie fails, and that is very unfortunate. So,
It's sad. Like I don't know if you guys have seen David Gordon Green's like earlier movies, even before like he started doing comedies with Danny McBride and stuff. But he'd made like just cool little independent dramas, like George Washington in the early 2000s, and then he basically ended up being the guy for the like Danny McBride crew, right? So then it was like Pineapple Express and a whole bunch. Danny McBride gets a story credit on this movie, and
yeah,
also like was involved in the story in the Halloween movies. So it's just funny to see like what a path, you know, because I
yeah,
do think he tried to bring some original stuff to Halloween. I think there are some original ideas here. It's just you didn't stick the landing, guy. It's a shame.
agreed.
Mhm.
All right, folks, let's dive into spoilers for The Exorcist Believer starting right now. Say what you will about the tenets of Catholicism. At least it's an ethos.
I feel
Um,
like we gotta retire this phrase in this bit, but yeah,
disagree. It's so relevant for this movie. I think
for this movie, yeah, you retire on the last
it-
good relevant
Hey,
one.
listen,
Yeah.
Devindra, it is
Yes.
a perfectly cromulent phrase.
absolutely. Did you see? So what is it? Did Unitarian make this movie? Like, what is going on? What is going on here at the end of this movie?
But, and
mean,
then what's
listen-
the point of it?
Yeah.
Okay, bring all these things together, but then have it mean anything at all.
It's also it's not quite so it's different, like different basically ways of viewing the Christian God, right? Now, do you
Right.
feel like no, the real opportunity here is to just basically do a priest, a rabbi, and a mom walk into a bar,
Right,
joke,
exactly,
right? And basically, like, actually give us like how different cultures are viewing it, because I think that's interesting.
and
you know?
and maybe have it be a little contentious or interesting, or have
Sure.
there be literally any
Any
reason
conflict
for
whatsoever?
yeah. It's like
But
the
it's okay, Jeff.
exorcism
It's
is
not like people of different religions have ever like really had major long running conflict before. So
If there's
like,
one thing we can agree on is exorcism, demons are bad. So
Yeah.
we're gonna
but
fight
like
them together.
dude, the exorcism is building up to it, drilling
Yeah.
the things into the
Yeah.
floor, like
Yeah.
fuck
So
yeah, this is gonna be
cool. So
rad.
cool.
Like it is the most anticlimactic, boring, not scary, not interesting. And then we get to the one interesting thing, which like choose
Mhm.
a girl to die. Now I'm like, okay, movie, okay, all right, that's fucked up. Let's do something with that. No, I'm not gonna do anything with that. Just gonna
No,
Well,
Jeff,
it kinda
because
did. It
the
kinda
person
did.
who chooses is the more evil one, you see, and that's the person that should die. So it's like Solomon cutting the baby in half type of
It's
deal.
very
you know?
much,
So, like,
don't
Whoever is
bargain with
okay
the
with the
deceiver.
baby being cut in half, they're not the real mother. Like that
just
kind of.
so banal.
Mhm, mhm.
Just like completely uninteresting. Like, and you have this kind of juicy thing, and then by the end, everybody's like, nah, "I'm okay with it. It's all right." It's like, dude, come on. Do you want to disturb me?
Yeah.
Disturb me. You don't like. What are we even doing here? I don't know.
It's weird because it tries for hokiness. Like I think it tries to be like uplifting by the end, and it just
Yeah.
reads as hokey when it's not earned. You can't just say you got to bring people together to fight the ultimate evil, because I mean, if I love the original Exorcist, but it's also very much a Christian superhero movie, right? Like it is very much the disciples of God can fight evil, they fight evil, and they win. That's it. And I think there are more interesting ways of exploring that if you actually bring in things beyond Christianity, or if you actually do something more interesting here. It tries. I think this movie certainly tries, but also like I think it's both funny that they bring in Chris McNeil, Ellen Burstyn's character, and she's like, I don't know why I wasn't there, man. Blame the patriarchy, right? LOL. She gets blinded and is once again not part of the Exorcist.
Yeah.
Why bring it up if you're gonna do it to her again?
Fair point.
Like, what was the point of her character at all? Because she does nothing.
We got Ellen Burstyn is what happened.
Yeah,
we got Ellen
One
Burstyn.
of my favorite social posts online that I saw was Ellen Burstyn's like, yeah, they would back in the day, they wouldn't let me watch The Exorcism because of the patriarchy.
Mhm.
And then somebody online commented, I don't know, lady, I'd be a lot more grateful to the guys that saved your daughter's life by sacrificing theirs.
They also never said, no, don't be in here. I'm pretty sure she just didn't go in the room.
Well,
They never said you were not allowed. Yeah.
It is a catastrophic decision to bring Ellen Burstyn back in this
Mhm.
film. No part of that plot line worked for me, right?
So you're an Exorcist superhero. Got it. Like, you've been through this before. Yeah.
I must admit, I got a little thrill seeing her.
Mhm.
I
yeah.
get to meet her in real life once, and she's amazing. But and so there's part of me that was just like, wow, they got her. That's cool. But you're right. They do nothing with it. Nothing whatsoever. It's a waste of everybody's time. It's this weird like divergence into, it's stunt casting in its worst permutation.
There's this whole plot line of, oh, she and Linda Blair's character are estranged from each other because she went public with the Exorcist stuff. And then I'm watching this, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't like that. Like, that's not,
I don't like that at all.
That's not a good outcome for that. Would Chris McNeil really sacrifice her relationship with her daughter to go public with the Exorcist stuff?
I believe that character would do this. She was a celebrity, right? She was a movie star. I believe she would do something like this, but it does really shit on the relationship you build in the first movie.
What I recall from Chris McNeil from the first film is she was willing to sacrifice everything in her life to protect her daughter. So the idea that she's going to be like, I'm giving it up for some YouTube views, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, but it's like, all right, well,
she thought she was trying to help other people. Which,
yeah. But I'm like, okay, maybe there's going to be an interesting. Nope, just freaking fast forward all the way to the end of the story. And by the way, she's back now. Like, her daughter's back at the end. Woo, her daughter's back. That's it.
That's it.
What are we doing here? There's like a whole reel of this movie that was left out of this,
That's really the refrain is, what are we doing in this movie? What are we even doing?
Yeah.
Like,
Jeff, you asked for our After Dark to be rescheduled so you could watch the first one and then we could review it for the After Dark in advance before you watch this one. Do you think it would have like colored your reaction to the second one to have like kind of watch them both at once, right? As opposed to
I'm really glad we got to. I got to get all my views out of rewatching the first Exorcist before this travesty was foisted upon me.
Because it might have tainted your perspective.
I think so. I don't know. Maybe. I certainly would have talked about it, differently. I don't know if it would. I don't think it would have, made the maybe. Would have made me even stronger with my my appreciation of the first movie.
Yeah.
But in contrast, I'm just glad I didn't have. I'm glad I was sort of pure in that reaction and going into this movie, just looking forward. Hopefully, like it could be as good as what that movie is. But yeah, no, it is. And the Ann Dowd character, like again. We get like 2 monologues and she's amazing. But that could have been the thrust of the film is who is this woman and how is she going to be involved? She could have been that sort of grounding force, but the movie just doesn't care. It's got so many things that it's just regurgitating as pea soup onto the screen instead of actually spinning its head around and noticing it all. See what I did there? Anyway,
I don't know why the Baptist minister was there at all. Like, he's just like, I thought we were having a party, guys. It's like, I was invited to the wrong party. I do not belong in this room. No. It's just so weird. None of it makes sense.
I mean, one of the other areas First of all, I don't even believe Baptists believe in exorcism. Like I don't think that's an institution. I'm not sure, but like
Mhm.
that's my
Well,
sense.
they do
But
now.
one of the things that's so weird about the movie is how it handles the priest character, because the priest, Father Karras, is like, other than Chris McNeil, is like the emotional center of The Exorcist Part One, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, well, for the Exorcist believer, we're gonna take the ingredients from Part One, we're gonna like remix them a little bit. Now there's two girls that need exorcism, but there's still a priest, and Chris McNeil's still there, and so it's like, okay. But then, like the way they introduce the priest is so clumsy.
Mhm.
It's like,
Oh,
okay,
so clumsy.
this is gonna be the big priest guy. Like he's gonna be a big deal in this movie, and then it's like, oh, I can't wait to learn more about. Maybe this is gonna be the new Father Karras. Basically, know nothing about him. Basically, don't learn anything about him. There is one of my favorite episodes of the Treehouse of Horror of The Simpsons is
Mhm.
a parody of The Shining called The Shinning, and groundskeeper
You want to
Willie
get
has.
sued?
Yeah, he has the shinning powers,
Yep.
and like he finally like bursts through to save Bart at the end, and then just immediately gets annihilated.
I mean,
It
to
is
be
a
fair, that's what happens to every priest in at least the first Exorcist, right? So,
well,
maybe he was afraid.
but
I do wonder if his
it's
character.
it is comical in this
It-
movie
it's
how it's like
hilarious. It's
it's like,
hilarious.
oh, we're building up to the priest having a big moment. He comes immediately, he is killed
Immediately
after
I
he
he
do
goes
died.
think
to the
that I
house.
actually kind of liked that in
Yeah.
the sense that because
Yeah.
he like really walks in as like,
He's like,
I'm here to
I'm ready.
save the day.
It's
And
like
he's
when it's like the part when the Avenger, like in the Avengers Part One, when like the camera twirls
Yeah.
around and you see like all the different heroes. It's like I started cackling because I was like,
Yeah.
this is
Oh,
hilarious. The priest coming in with a Bible and being like,
I think it was
you know,
meant to be funny. I think
Uh-huh,
it was
uh-huh.
Yeah.
undermining, subverting those expectations in it,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be
Mhm.
humorous, and I thought it
I
was
hope so.
effective.
I hope
Because
so.
but
it's
effective
that.
in the wrong way, in the sense that like we don't have anybody. It should have been the Ann Dowd character,
Yes.
right? It
Mhm.
should have been, or if you're gonna have two kids, two girls from different backgrounds, then have there really be this conflict of how which faith we're going to go with, or there's
Right.
going to be some conflict of how we're going to deal with it. That would be kind of interesting. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, we got to do this, this sort of Catholic thing, or no, we're not going to do.
Yeah.
But the
But-
movie completely abandons any notion of that.
The problem is, Jeff, with that plan is like I mean, that's a good plan. That's a good
Mhm.
idea. The problem is the other girl is not a point of view character. Like I think
Right.
she really needs to be a POV character, just like Chris McNeil and Karras were both point of view characters in the original Exorcist.
Mhm.
If you're going to have this conflict between these two families, you need them both to be point of view characters, as opposed to like, oh, this girl who like I thought was going to be a secondary character is now like one of the main two people that we
Yeah.
need to care about. It's just it's just
It's
weird,
such a
bizarre
mess.
decisions. It's just
So
bizarre
it
decisions,
felt
right? Like,
pointless when she dies, basically,
Right.
because we didn't
Yeah.
really care about her. Like,
Well, that's the whole
it-
point. We're supposed
yeah.
to feel okay because
Yeah.
that one was the one that killed, and her family, we don't really like them. It's like,
Right.
it's so toothless. It's so like,
right.
It's
we're
so-
not going to upset you too much,
Yeah.
audience, because
Yeah.
the bad girl died, and with the bad family, and the
Yeah.
people that we don't really, they're kind of annoying.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, come on.
And you're
it's
saying,
so
Jeff, it
weird.
would have been more bold to like kill someone we actually like, or
Or
like
let
or-
us
Yeah.
let us actually, as the audience, wrestle with that impossible Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
the movie gets to this place of a Sophie's choice of choose which darling innocent child is going to die. If you don't, they both die.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That okay, now we're in some place of that's interesting.
And I like that initial moment too, like both parents, like the mom and the dad, on the different sides, they're like, I'm not going to choose.
Right.
And I think that is kind of interesting. They wrestle with it, and then the shithead coward, just like ruins everything.
Oh, and he
I
got
love-
his because
got
he was
his.
being a shithead coward. It's like that is
Yeah.
the most pat, easiest. It's
Yeah.
letting the audience off the hook. It's letting the
Mhm.
audience, instead of actually making you wrestle with this horrible thing, and actually making you uncomfortable, actually going, oh my God, pure evil means there is no right answer to this.
Mhm.
Like, that's interesting. And the movie just completely cops out. It's such
a
a
shame.
waste. Yeah.
Because there are threads of good ideas too. I like the ultimate realization, or the demon saying like, "Oh yeah, you did not actually choose to have this daughter, right? Like you chose your wife over her," and that conflict and seeing him wrestle with that throughout the movie would have been more interesting.
Yes.
I have a lot of issues with this movie just opening straight up in Haiti for the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, which was a horrific event which killed countless people, and it kind of feels weird and gross for it to be just the way to lift off an Exorcist reboot. I don't know. Did not feel great about that either.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you on that. In that it's using a real life tragedy to kind of set this thing up.
Yeah.
There's been some people who have called this movie anti-abortion, which I don't agree with.
I don't quite.
I don't think it has really any kind of coherent ideology other than people come together, feel good. People joining hands feel good. You know, like that's kind of what it is. And that's really, you know, to make the original point, right? That's kind of what it's trying to say is like, it's trying to be a more universalist version of The Exorcist. It's trying to say like, hey, doesn't matter what religion you are, as long as you believe in the Christian God.
Yes,
like, we all come, we all come together and like,
the one thing it comes out against, honestly, is atheism.
Right? Yeah,
you know, because it establishes that guy Victor as a non-believer. I mean, literally called believer. So, and he's a non-believer. He's the only one who's like, well, I was wrong. I guess I was wrong.
So it's a similar journey to what Father Karras goes through in the first film, but like much more effectively in the first film, in my opinion, right? Like you see his struggles with it in a way that I think is more meaningful in the first film. Leslie Odom Jr. is an amazing actor, but I just think the material is just not strong enough in this film. So, any other thoughts about The Exorcist Believer?
Are we getting 2 more of these or just 1 more?
Supposed to be a trilogy, although David Gordon Green has said he's not sure if he's directing the next 2.
Okay.
But I have very few complaints about his actual direction. I mean, yes, the exorcism itself was not that exciting, but and actually let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I do think
it's weird.
I do think that we lose a lot in the transition from Exorcist 1 to Exorcist the Believer, because The Exorcist 1 used a ton of practical effects, right? Like vomit actually coming out, you know, head turning, bed lifting up, like all like her floating was done using cables. Like a lot of that stuff was done practically. And there's just a lot more CG in this movie.
There's just not much that happens though.
It's
there's
not that
not
interesting.
much.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for there to be some transgressive, jarring, horrific thing that and nothing happens.
Oh, nothing. Just wait, Jeff. Just wait till next week.
Oh, don't do that.
I think probably also something that like, you know, Jeff, in our After Dark conversation, you were saying how one of the quote unquote fun thing, like you appreciate the Exorcist differently now, but one of the quote unquote fun things of watching it back then was like, oh, look at the cute, adorable girls say like use horrible language. And that concept just holds less power today. You know what I'm saying? Like, because kids are a lot less innocent today.
I see, you know, TikTok.
Like, you see what the Gen Z's consuming on TikTok, and it's just like, I think just everyone of all ages is more worldly these days. So I think the shock value is just not there as it was back then. But just the stuff that happens during the exorcism, the concept of the exorcism, the execution of the idea that all these people coming together, none of it was particularly effective. And that's a huge bummer, you know, because that's really what you need to deliver on. The movie gets really close to being a solid film.
So close. I think that's what's so disappointing.
Fumbles at the 20-yard line, unfortunately. So, well, anyway, despite everything we have just said, at the end of the day, it is still impressive that David Gordon Green made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.